Welcome to Prose and Cons, a podcast by writers for writers. Brought to you by Precipice Fiction. Precipice Fiction would like to acknowledge the people of the Eora and Durrag nations as the original custodians and storytellers of the land that this podcast was created on.
Welcome to the Prose and Con podcast, a podcast by emerging writers who are really starting to emerge recently, I feel. For
Emerged writers.
Yeah, are we mid-emergence? Are we late emergence? Early emergence? We're trying.
Now we sound like prehistoric fossils from the pre-emergent period.
Well, we are getting older. Welcome to our podcast, Pros and Cons. You guys know us by now, probably. My name is Matan Elul. I'm hosting today. With me are the ones and only. Can you do that in plural? The ones and only.
The ones and many.
Ali Burnham.
Hello, I'm Ali. I am a screenwriter across film and TV. My feature Unsound came out in 2020. It did its little cinema run and then was on Netflix, and now it's on Apple. So you can check that one out. I also write Metropius, which is a hard to explain thing, but it appears as comic books and short films. And there's like a board game in the works and a series in the works.
Kind of shapeshifting.
And I also write books, which includes my short story contribution to the New Mythic.
Well, that's definitely late emerging. James Healy.
Hello, I'm James Healy. I'm definitely on the earlier emerging side of things. I'm a writer and editor. I do mostly short stories and kind of horror and science fiction stories, although I am branching into some historical fiction stuff at the moment. And I'm known for Cooling Engines, which is my contribution to the New Mythic anthology.
Very nice. Again, my name is Matan Elul. I'm also a writer, but I'm also a high school teacher of English, freelance editor. My contribution to the New Mythic was a short story called Glyphlight. And yeah, I'm also kind of into horror, as you'll probably hear. Well, guys, the podcast we're going to do today is all about twists. Now, I realized as I was preparing for this podcast that it's going to be a lot of TV and film, right? Because I know books have some fantastic twists and hopefully we'll discuss them. But I can't help but feel that film and TV is really going to dominate this episode. And that's fine because, you know, we do not discriminate. Writing is writing. We'll see how that goes. But before we discuss our twists and our questions, guys, what have you been reading or watching?
Well, I'll jump in because this is relevant to the last episode we recorded. And if we're a good little podcast schedule, in theory, the Brandon Sanderson episode gets released before this episode. But if you have listened to that episode, listeners, we played a game at the end of that called the Cosmere Cup, where James and Matan argued for why different characters would win in bouts against each other. And I'm currently reading Stormlight 5, Wind and Truth. And a very funny thing happened where even in the past week since we recorded that episode, something happened where I'm like, oh, it's already out of date. There was the fight between Szeth and Kaladin. Well, Szeth and Kaladin have been, you know, they've been on like a buddy cop road movie so far in this book, which has been a lot of fun. If you've listened to the Cosmere Cup episode, we came to the conclusion that in their second bout against each other, Szeth might win against Kaladin.
Wait, not we came to the conclusion. James
we're shifting
Healy
blame, are
came
we?
to the conclusion. Please go on. Sorry.
That Szeth may have been motivated enough to defeat Kaladin. But there was no fight between them per se, but there was a very funny moment where they were both up against an enemy. And Szeth turns to Kaladin and goes, I don't think I've got this. You beat me last time, so it's all you, friend. And then Kaladin goes, oh, I guess it's all me then. So that is hilariously reframed the Cosmere Cup episode. So go check that out if you haven't listened to it. And Stormlight 5, I was also kind of umming and ahhing, being like, I'm waiting for something to happen, especially with Kaladin's plot. Anyway, the plot stickers finally poked Kaladin. pretty much at this minute. So I'm in like the final act 3. So stuff may start going down very soon.
Ellie, just to
So
confirm, you mentioned last time that books 6 to 10 are actually going to be like a separate entity.
that's right.
So
Yes, in the
you're
same way Mistborn Era 1 and 2 are
right.
quite separate things. He's
So
doing a Stormlight Era 1 and 2.
so you're reaching the end of the story. You're reaching the finale. The thing.
Yes.
The thing is
It's
happening.
all in
All
this
the
act
things.
3, it's all about to implode. So I think that's why the plot and pacing has felt like it's been dragging its feet. Like maybe Brandonson hasn't even wanted to end it. So it's
I
just been waiting, and it's about to submarine.
that would kickstart reignite my Stormlight reading, knowing that the ending is there. I think that will definitely
Yeah,
happen.
okay. When I get to the end, I'll just either give you a thumbs up or a thumbs down. That'll be our only
Mm,
communication, and then
let's
you
do
got
it.
to go forth and finish it.
This is Game of Thrones season 8 all over again. Okay.
That'll be our code word.
Yes. James,
Oh
what
no,
about
it's
you?
Daenerys.
Um, I've just read The Bees by Lachlan Paul, which is a story entirely about bees. It's set in a beehive. It's about one bee who was born
That's so cute.
kind of different than she was supposed to be, or different from. It's
Oh,
kind of a very regimented society, so she's born a bit different, which usually just means you get destroyed. But in this case, she ends up getting kind of taken into a different community, and she ends up trying out a bunch of different roles within the beehive, and her ability to journey through the different roles in the beehive kind of allows her to start changing things for the better and stuff. It's actually a
I,
fantastic book.
I'm
It's a
so
great setting,
I'm so sold.
really well written.
Why am I
Yeah,
so
oh, it's
sold
really,
on
really good.
this? Why am I so
It's like
deeply
a
invested?
yeah, it's like a really good, almost like dystopian fantasy.
Wow.
But
Wow.
I feel like it's probably pretty well researched because I looked up Lolly Paul, and she mostly writes stories about animals or from the perspective of animals, and I think she's like a biologist as well. So she frames the story around how the animal dynamics work, and how the societies work. So it's a really
Wow.
good story about a beehive kind of on the brink of disaster, and there's one bee
How
that ends up kind of in a position to fix things and break the social hierarchy and structure. So
That's
really good book. I highly
incredible.
recommend it.
James, I'm
Yeah.
so curious. How are like expressions described? Do bees frown? Do they smile? Do they wink? What do they do these things?
No, they're not, like, it's very um it is all about like their antennas and how they smell each other and how they pick up on each other's locations and stuff.
Do they buzz
And
angrily?
they buzz angrily, yeah. And they buzz angrily, and if they're annoyed at you, if you break the rules, they pull you apart. It's like a really aggressively fascistic society.
My
And
God.
You
yeah. And
you
then everyone
fool, Dumbledore
everyone is
buzzed
working
humbly.
towards like the queen. So like it's like the
Oh,
pheromones of the queen is almost like
wow, this is like a
uh
YA.
just brain bleach. Everyone is just like hooked on this drug, and they
Oh
love it. And
shit.
things are communicated through smells and stuff like that.
Just think of
Information is communicated through smells. That's what it is. So yeah, it's really, really good. I highly recommend
that's so cool. Just think of the
Wow.
fanfic people are gonna write about this. Um,
it.
Incredible stuff. Wow, this is James, you've been on fire with your recommendations. Um, well, I'm really glad you're here. This is awkward, James. I'm not tokenizing you, okay? But every time I mention that I've been reading Irish literature, I feel like you're not around to be impressed. So I have been
All
reading
right.
Irish literature. Like I'm saying, like I'm here
It's
with
finally happened.
I'm here with the American and the Australians and the pseudo New Zealander, and it's like
Yeah.
and no one's here to. Anyway, I've been reading Irish literature, James, and
Excellent.
I've been reading.
Pat on the head.
Am I tokenizing you? I hope not. Um, I've been reading Mary Levine and Edna O'Brien.
Okay.
Short story. So these are women that write short stories. A lot of their stories are about motherhood and being a woman in Catholic parts of Ireland or Protestant parts of Ireland. Doesn't really matter. And what I've been doing is I've been reading them to compare them to Claire Keegan's writer as a modern Irish writer. And
Excellent.
I'm writing a paper about Irish literature. Look at me, all academic and stuff, about the motherhood described in Claire Keegan's Small Things Like These,
Mm.
and the mothers in Edna O'Brien and Mary Levine's short stories. So
Brilliant. Okay.
Listeners, if you're looking for really good reads, Mary Levine is freaking amazing. She's really good. She'll pull the rug from under you. And I highly recommend her and Edna O'Brien, of course, who's I think Edna O'Brien is a more versatile writer in terms of what she kind of produced, but also highly recommended.
On that topic, I'm doing I suppose, a writer's seminar, I'm doing a writer's retreat hosted by Claire Keegan in March.
Oh shit.
It'll be
Shut
Wow.
up.
kind of, yeah, it'll be
Do you,
specifically on like the Irish short story. So,
I need
um,
you. I need to talk to you later. Anyway,
yeah, for sure, for sure.
all right.
It's just got intense.
That was a twist, wasn't it? All right, let's get to the thing. Very cool, guys, to catch up with you. So, twists. Obviously, we're going to discuss a lot of twists. I sent you guys some questions in advance. Again, let's just maybe try to define
God,
what is a
did you?
twist. First of all, I think in the broadest sense, a twist is when you think A is A, but A is actually B. Like you put the reader into the suspicion or the assumption that something is a certain way, and then they discover that it is not. It is not the same as not knowing. If I don't know something at all, it's not a twist. I just didn't know, and then you told me. A twist is when I think something is a certain way, that the story beats and the characters kind of try to lead me towards a certain point, and then hopefully in a satisfying way, I will discover that that is not exactly the case. The problem is that sometimes a twist can feel like you've been lied to, and that can either create a sensation of, oh, good job, writer, you really got me there, you convinced me, or like, what the hell did I just read? This is not fair. You did not properly foreshadow this. You are just pulling one out of your ass. And I guess that's something that a lot of writers want to do twists. I feel like I sometimes feel obligated to have some level of a twist in my long form stories. Like, what is a good story without a twist, right? It's just a straightforward walk down the road. So that's why I think my first question to you guys is not what is a good twist or what is a bad twist. I want to know what is the most outrageous twist you can come up with that you've read or watched, and then you can say if you liked it or if you hated it. But just what's the most absurd twist you've come upon?
Pause for awkward edit. I mean, I'll start by unpacking that I really appreciate your definition just then of you've set the audience up to believe A is A, and defining the twist is the reveal moment when A is actually B. Apologies if you did send through questions, Matan. I don't think I saw them.
Okay.
But my little bit of pre-thinking before this episode
I'll
was...
send them again, just in case while we're talking.
What a twist! They never...
Time machine
But
doesn't
in my
work.
pre-thinking, I was actually thinking about how much twists actually frighten me. And if someone asked me to define a twist, I don't think like I would struggle, or I would have just said something along the lines of a surprise or an unexpected reveal. Because I think the word twist gets used like it's thrown around so much. It's almost like the word stakes for me, that it was thrown around so much that I'm just like, stakes, now it has no meaning anymore. I kind of really had to go away and come up with my own internalized definition of stakes, because otherwise it was just such a willy-nilly phrase people were throwing about raising the stakes, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what are you actually saying? So twist was a little bit like that for me. So even you framing it that way has really helped. Because it does get used quite loosely. And I'm thinking of even in comedy and with a joke, how a 3-step approach to a joke is set up, escalation, twist.
Yeah.
And the twist can be anything. It's so open-ended, but it just has to kind of capture that element of the unexpected, the surprise. But I can see how it works very well with your definition as well, that if you're set up A is A, and by B, and by the twist, A now equals B.
Right.
So,
And
yeah,
I
I've already
think
learned something, Matan. Thank you.
I think it's more satisfying where it's not a blatant lie. Like the narration or the narrator or doesn't explicitly tells you A is A. It puts the heavy-handed hints or the subtle hints that A is A, and you kind of connect the dots, and then you feel less cheated. Again, maybe we shouldn't get to this example so quickly, but Harry Potter, okay, I know it's a really good one. It's a great one in Harry Potter in the first book, The Sorcerer's Stone. Harry and again kind of think Snape is the one trying to get to all the defenses, and he's the bad guy, and he's trying the Voldemort accomplice or whatever, or the guy trying to get the stone. And there are hints. The narration never explicitly states Snape, and in fact, when they do ask adults, the adults kind of push back against it, like, no, Snape would never do that. But you, as the reader, feel like, no, I think I actually trust Harry on this. You know, the
You're
11-year-old
so heavily
boy.
embedded in Harry's perspective in that book
Exactly.
that, yeah.
So when it does turn out that it is someone else, you don't feel like the author just kind of lied to you or changed their mind. They gave you a scene, they gave you a perspective. They were brave enough to give you the counter perspective, hoping that you would ignore it, basically.
Yes,
And
but
that
seeded in regardless,
exactly.
so it can still be true.
Yeah, so you need good stepping stones to a good twist. I'll give my most outrageous twist while you guys are stewing and thinking about it. It's also one of my favorite movies, and that's Fight Club. And spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't watched Fight Club or read the book Fight Club of the same name, I believe. In the movie Fight Club, basically, there's these two friends. They meet randomly on a plane, and one of them radicalizes the other, and kind of they open a fight club together. But it doesn't stop there. They start to do all this crazy shit together, kind of, you know, kill the rich.
Anarchist shit.
Don't actually,
Yeah.
yeah, anarchy. Yeah, it ends with explosions and stuff. Brad Pitt and Edward Norton, and there's also this tension between them because they're kind of going for the same girl, but she's only having sex with one of them. One of them is very handsome, acted by a young Brad Pitt. Just I'll put that visual in your mind. And the other one kind of feels a bit lacking in many aspects. And then twist is that you discover that one of them doesn't exist. And A has been B all this time. Basically, the character of Edward Norton has been the character of Brad Pitt. And the crazy thing is, what I like about this twist is that the twist is not just that the character of Edward Norton is a hallucinating schizophrenic or whatever. The acts that the other character has committed did happen. They were just committed by him. So it's not like he's just talking to himself. The other characters truly experience what the imaginary character has been doing. He has been sleeping with that woman. He has been recruiting people. He has been conducting fight clubs. So it's not just, oh, you imagined this guy all alone. He's your imagination. You've been talking to an empty phone booth. No, it's like they are the same person, which that is why I found that twist so interesting. And because when you rewatch it, you realize that fake character never explicitly talks to anyone that talks back to them. So the two things I really like about this twist is that if you rewatch the movie, it feels really earned, you know? It really dangerously gives you all the breadcrumbs to notice that something's off. And the second reason I like it is, like I said, that interesting angle, which is not just you imagine this guy, but you are that guy. You are that person. And that leaves you with this hybrid character by the end that is neither Brad Pitt and neither exactly what Edward Norton was. He's both of them. And that's why I think it was a really well executed twist.
There's something else that I really like in that film, which is that the fact that the character is narrated the whole time, and if he decides to say, "Oh, hold on, let me start earlier," and he skips from one thing to the next, it makes you feel like you're that much more inside his head. And there's a bunch of really stylistic stuff with how the scenes are directed, where he might be standing in the middle of a room that he's not really supposed to be in that room. He's kind of telling you about something else that happened to someone else, but he's standing in the middle of that room, breaking the fourth wall, talking to the audience. So it kind of subtly makes the audience think, like, not to take what they're seeing on screen, like they're not that literally. So like the camera becomes a bit of an unreliable narrator.
Yeah.
So when they turn around and do that switch later on, it doesn't feel jarring. It just feels like it
Of course.
feels very seamless with everything that you've seen so far. Yeah, great twist.
That's a really
And it
interesting
feels,
point.
it's like you said, it feels like one that you should see coming. But like it's outrageous,
Yeah.
but it works every time you watch it. Yeah.
This idea that you said earlier, Matan, that we're going to be talking a lot about film and TV in this episode as our examples, less so books, when it seems interesting that the unreliable narrator to me feels so much easier to do
Oh yeah.
in books, in
Hmm.
prose.
A
So
lot
if
easier.
that's the tool you're relying on to lead the audience to an incorrect conclusion, like
Mm.
Harry having a bit of like hatred towards
Misjudgment.
Snape, so he leads you to think that it's Snape. But in film and TV, it's so much harder to treat the camera, which is this third eye, as an unreliable narrator. The obviously the voiceover goes a really long way when you really want to lean on that. But I think we're going to use some other examples that don't use. Oh well, now I'm going to second guess myself.
I
But
think that just to cut in, I think that that while it's probably easier to do it in prose, um, it's also less impactful. Like so when the story
yeah.
comes along and is like, oh, this character wasn't there, it's a lot easier for you to
It-
accept that
yeah.
based on the way the story is told. So that when a twist is done well in film,
Mm,
it kind of shocks you that much more. So I think that's why those things stand out that much more in kind of like our cultural memory. Is
it
when the
Exactly.
film gets
resonates.
you.
Because
Yeah.
Yeah.
an unreliable narrator is just a liar. It's not necessarily a twist. You've been lied to. It's not that you have
Well.
misassumed something. You've just been told something that is not true, which is cool.
Mm.
I love unreliable narrators. They're amazing. Are they
I see
twists?
what you're saying, but the film leads you, you're like, I have made my own conclusion because
Yeah.
you're just that extra step separated from the character voice that you are very confident in your own belief that you are watching the movie correctly, and then you're not.
Yeah.
I'd say my outrageous plot twist is probably The Usual Suspects.
Oh,
Any
let's go.
listeners who haven't seen The Usual Suspects, I urge you to pause this podcast and come back to it once you've seen it because it's a really good film and then there's a really really famous satisfying twist at the end of the film. There are still some people out there who've managed to miss it somehow, so please do pause and go and watch it and come back. But
Okay,
that
you're
is just
back.
a great twist that you feel when I watch it now. I feel like people should see this coming because it seems so obvious. Just to refresh anyone who's hasn't seen it for a while, it is a film which takes place someone who's entirely in the context of a police interview. A police is interviewing a guy who was kind of like the last survivor of this big drug deal gone wrong. He's asking the guy what went down. And during the course of the interview, the detective gets a name, Kaiser Soze, who's meant to be this big legendary crime lord, drug pin who no one's ever seen. He's kind of like this ghost. He's kind of like a myth. So he's interviewing this guy, um, about this guy, Kaiser Soze, and at the end of the film, it turns out the guy is Kaiser Soze. We get this reveal as he's walking out of the police station that he's led the detective astray with this whole story. But it works so well because the detective has blinders on, and the detective thinks that one of the guys from this character's story is Kaiser Soze, and he was pulling the strings the whole time. And the character himself is almost defending this guy, like he doesn't want to believe it was this guy. And the character himself, played by Kevin Spacey, is doesn't give off the air of like a crime lord. So he seems really meek and he seems like a real subordinate character. But it's because of this
Mm.
dramatic conflict between the detective and the interviewee that the detective is pushing it's this guy and the interviewee is like, no, I don't believe it's that guy. And that's what creates a lot of the drama in the film, that it makes you as the audience look so hard at the other character and you completely never suspect Kevin Spacey.
You never suspected Kevin Spacey, huh? Sorry.
Yes, yes.
I'm sorry.
Complete blindside.
I'm so sorry.
I've managed to think of mine. Mine would probably be The Prestige
Ooh,
as
I love
Mm,
that
a
one.
film that had such an
absolutely.
ambitious twist,
Early
and it did
Nolan.
successfully get me the first time I watched it. So again, listeners, if you want to avoid spoilers for The Prestige, this is your time to pause. Um, but essentially, you've got two rival magicians. We're talking like real world stage magicians, old timey magicians. One of them played by Hugh Jackman. Hugh Jackman sees his rival, played by, oh, give me the actor's name.
Christian Bale and Hugh Jackman.
Christian Bale, perform this like amazing trick on stage. Even though he's not much of a showman, the craft of what he's pulled off like astonishes Hugh Jackman so much. It's essentially he walks into one box, door shuts, and then he steps
What a
out of a
crazy
box on the
twist.
other
Oh
side
my
of the
God.
stage. And he does it so quickly, Hugh Jackman's like, I don't know how he's pulling this off. Is it a trap door? Has he got levers going on? And it's just the story of Hugh Jackman's character slowly going insane, trying to work out how he can pull off this trick. Because if he, with all his showmanship, can pull it off, like he's going to be a millionaire. He'll be remembered forever.
I just want to clarify. The trick is that he teleports from one side of the stage to the other.
Well,
Well, the trick is that he
Well,
walks
the
into a
trick.
door
No, not
and
the
he
twist.
comes
I'm
out.
not
No,
revealing
I
the
mean-
twist. The trick that he performs that drives Hugh Jackman crazy is that Christian Bale's character teleports.
it's happening so fast that he's going
so-
from one side of the stage to the other. He can't work out
There's
how
no
he's
tunnel.
doing it.
It's too far. Yeah, keep going.
Yep. So the only way Hugh Jackman can replicate it is this is where it starts to go into like spec fic territory. He goes
It goes crazy.
Tesla, Nikolai Tesla, and he's like, build me a cloning machine. And God help Nikolai Tesla, he does.
He does. Yeah.
That's not the twist. And then so Hugh Jackman starts performing this trick off with this body double that is his clone. But if you've ever seen a clone movie, you know it goes poorly and that you don't want to give your clone's agency out in the world. That's bad. So therefore, the only like reasonable thing to do is murder your clones the moment the trick is done. So
Okay.
Hugh Jackman he becomes rich and famous because he's stolen this trick. He's doing it with magic clones. He's murdering a bunch of clones. It's just his deterioration of his morals. And then twist, how has Christian Bale been doing it all along? He has a twin. It's just that simple. It's
So
not
unfair.
magic. It's not anything else.
I love it.
It's actually been two brothers playing the long Kong, would call it kayfabe in wrestling, that they've been pretending to be one person their whole life. So the whole subplot with him having romance, I was going to say romance issues. That's what a weird way to phrase that. A complicated relationship with his wife is because only one of the brothers is in love with the wife and the other brother's not. So like suddenly she's like, why do you seem to love me some days and don't love me other days? And that all just wonderfully snaps into place in your brain the moment you realize there's twins. They're twins.
It's insane in a movie.
It
with
sounds outrageous
cloning.
to say out loud as a synopsis, but watching it, you're totally on board with cloning technology and the twist totally gets you. So good job, Nolan. Outrageous, amazing.
Ali, that was an incredible pick. I haven't even thought about the Prestige when preparing for this podcast, but wow. It's so, I mean, the fact that the cloning is not the crazy part,
That's not
that's
just
the
a tool.
genius. That's the genius. The
yeah.
cloning, you kind of see it happen. But I think the interesting thing about the cloning is that we never know if the one being shot in the head like is the clone or the real one.
Yes, you think that's kind of the main focus of the movie. You're like, am I invested in the dilemma of, oh my God, is the Hugh Jackman I've come to care about dying? Is he the one going in the box? Or is it the clone that lives? You think that's the plot, and then it blindsides you. It's good.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
The cloning stuff is set up so well, and because there's been all this mystery around how did Christian Bale do his trick, you almost feel like you're discovering maybe this is how he did the trick. So it doesn't feel like it actually works really well. Like it doesn't feel like you're suddenly, oh, I'm in a science fiction novel. I don't have it.
It's the only logical thing to pull off this impossible thing. Is
Yes, yeah,
It's amazing.
great
So
film.
I feel like when we all chose our crazy twists, we actually picked twists that we like. How about we throw some slander out there that might potentially risk our writing careers in the future? Who would like to go first? Let's burn some bridges. What are some awful, shitty twists we've seen? I can go first unless one of you has something.
You
Yeah,
go
I'll
out
go on.
while I
I've
Google.
got a few, so maybe I might jump in now. and
All
see
right,
if I
look,
can get a
I'll go.
second go.
The easy one, the low-hanging fruit, and it feels like punching a puppy is. I'm still gonna punch a puppy real quick and then go to the real answer. Remember Me. It's called Remember Me, right? It's Robert
This is the
Pattinson movie.
Patterson. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
And basically, it's a romance movie. Let me just confirm the name. Yeah, it's a romance movie. It's a boy meets girls. They kind of figure their things out, and then in the last second of the movie, you zoom out, and it's the World Trade Center, 9/11, and the guy is
You've
just gonna
complained about
die.
this before.
I have complained about this, and I make it a point to complain about this on a regular basis because it deserves my regular complaints, and I need it. Okay, I will not let go of this. There it is, low-hanging fruit. Let's move on. A twist that I thought was not done well is the movie Now You See Me. Now You See Me.
I
Have
was
you
just
watched?
thinking of that. Yes,
Yeah,
go.
it's a movie about magicians again, kind of like The Prestige. Mark Ruffalo, is that how you say his last name? Ruffalo?
Yeah, yeah.
Ruffalo? He plays a detective that is investigating this new group of young and good-looking performers that might be they're doing these magic tricks, but something doesn't quite sit right. And the entire movie is basically from his perspective as he's kind of pursuing these magicians and kind of trying to get them. And again, spoiler alert, if anyone would like to watch that movie, in the end, we discover that he's actually been part of that community all along. He's part of this secret community of magicians, and his goal was not to capture them, but to actually invite them into this secret society of super duper magicians.
Wow, wow.
And the reason I did not like that twist, and I think the same plot can be done well, if only you do not show his perspective. If you show only the perspective of the other magicians as they're being chased by him, cool. I think that's actually a solid twist. But you can't show me him alone, basically bamboozling this poor partner woman that he has for no other reason other than psychological damage. Like, why do you have to trick her? She's not part of this. Why do you have to trick the audience? Basically, he always acts in character, even when he doesn't really have to. And we get invested in him alone. We're supposed to want him to succeed, and then like, oh, I haven't been trying all along. I'm actually wizard Jesus. I could have solved this in a second at the beginning of the movie. So what's the point, really? So I think on paper, as a synopsis, like Ali mentioned before, this could actually really work. This is where I think, oh God, I hope this director is not powerful and connected. That's where I think the director has failed, not necessarily the writer.
Yep. No, that's a good one. I was about to make fun of that. So I'm glad you did.
Yeah.
But it did remind me of for the exact same reasons you didn't like that twist is also the exact same reasons I didn't like the Da Vinci Code. So the Da Vinci Code does the exact
The
same
book
thing.
or the movie?
Both.
Okay,
The
go ahead.
book's probably more egregious.
Yeah.
But
Oh.
honestly, both.
Yeah, okay.
But it's the big twist is who's gonna be the villain? Who's been trying to stop us this whole time? And the villain is in fact the old doddering man who's been with
Uh,
us this whole time. And again, could be a great twist. It's good when you say it as a synopsis, except for the chapters written from his perspective, that he's never thinking of himself as a mustache twirling villain at any point in his thoughts. All his thoughts are he's method acting his help and concern for them the whole way. It's only once he's revealed to be the villain that suddenly his thoughts are maniacal and his true desires all along. And I'm like, that when you're lying and
yeah.
manipulating people, you're kind of very aware that that's your inner running monologue. So it's just bad writing. It's cheap writing. It's rude writing. So yes, that whole idea of faking the perspective just to hide a character's
Which
motives.
which touches on really the line between a twist, which is a cleverly set up false assumption by the reader, compared to spoon feeding either spoon feeding an assumption or outright lying or withholding information. And again, all these things, withholding information is not the same as a twist.
Yeah, no, it's a good mystery, and I've always split
Cool.
hairs between, say, like a classical Sherlock, where Sherlock gets to appear magical at the end because he's made conclusions with facts that were never given to the reader the whole way. So you're kind of like, oh, he's amazing. He found that out. When, as a reader, you never possibly could have reached the same conclusion because you didn't have the facts.
Weren't given
Sherlock
the
had.
details, right?
While a really good and it's more modern taste is a detective or a mystery, will give you all the clues. And if you as a reader are looking close enough, you should be able to solve it yourself. So I think if there was a time where it was quite popular to do the outright lying bit or omission of facts so you couldn't put it together, I agree that a good twist should work by the same principle, that all the same pieces are on the board
table,
the entire time, and there's no drapes, missing things hidden under cups. There's no lying.
James?
Okay. Does everyone remember? This is just me airing.
Go ahead.
I'm ready for the rant. I'm ready for the rant.
Cook, James. Cook.
Does everyone remember the time traveling science fiction action detective film Deja Vu with Denzel Washington?
First of all, that was an incredible intro to the movie. But no, I did not watch it. But
I know of it. I haven't seen it.
There's a reason.
Let's go.
This film has two incredible acts, in my opinion. It's kind of a bombastic premise. There's a terrorist attack. Denzel Washington is pulled into like the secret government department. Turns out that they have the ability to look like something like 3 days and 14 hours into the past. They can't pause it. They can't move it forwards or backwards. That's just where they can look. So they're asking him to kind of do the investigation in the present, to tell them where to look in the past, and so that they can look in the past and try to figure out who did it. So there's some really fun concept-y time travel stuff. There's one scene where Denzel Washington has to put on a headset and do a car chase with someone who is driving somewhere 3 days previous. So he's trying to follow this car in between traffic that is not there in front of him. It's in the past, but he's trying to avoid real-time traffic. A lot of really fun concept-y stuff. The film manages to carry on through the second act, and Denzel Washington finds out that he can send stuff back in time, and he tries to break the rules and send some stuff back in time to warn people or to potentially stop the attack happening. But events play out in such a way that they lead people to the same result, or their bodies end up in the same places. The film manages to be actually like really cleverly ambiguous as to whether or not Denzel Washington's efforts to change the past were just unsuccessful, or if the things that he did actually caused those people to be there.
Right, yep.
End of the second act, he finds the guy, catches the guy, and they have this really weird interview where this guy is almost kind of like, what are you doing here? And is treating it like, I'm not worried, I feel like I won. So you're like, oh my God, why does this guy seem like he's on top of things? Third act, Denzel Washington decides to send himself back in time to try to save somebody. He's fallen in love with one of the witnesses, or one of the people, one of the victims. So he tries to go back in time and do it. And as soon as he goes back in time, things happen that couldn't have happened unless he was there. So the film has just told you the rules of this time travel are actually a loop. So you're like, oh my God, it's on tracks. He's going to fail. He's not going to save the girl. The villain is probably going to kill him based on the way the villain treated him in the interview. And it's going to end in a disaster. This is all on tracks. And then the film just starts having plot hole after plot hole after plot hole. It breaks its own time travel rules, contradictions after contradictions, and just kind of a mishmashy, kind of gacky, happy ending. It's massive letdown. It's such a sudden swerve into like, oh, they don't seem to be knowing what they're doing, that I'm certain there was some kind of producer or studio
rewrite stamped on the ending.
Yeah, you can't have this negative ending. You have to come in and rewrite it so that it's positive.
Reshoots.
But yeah, such a letdown because it seemed like such a clever premise, and you said it seemed to be set up where it tells the audience this isn't going to work, but the character is still kind of firing ahead, and you're like, oh no, he's going to cause it, or he's going to do it, or something like that. So yeah, massive letdown. And I think that was a letdown by seeming like you've established rules and then breaking those rules, and then start a
I feel like
twist.
The twist is that the movie sucks because it sounded really good to a good extent.
It does suck, yeah. Real shame.
It's almost like it gave you the twist but then let you down
They
by
never
not
committed it.
fulfilling it. Like if
Yeah.
it's on hard rails is the twist, that's fantastic. But then it just didn't let you watch the car crash.
Just
That's
Yeah,
awful.
it's kind of like he saves the day. Obviously, you're kind of like not expecting it, but it was just kind of like, oh no, it's just how
I
it
kind of
done.
want to watch the trailer just so I can like put some images on this. Cool. I mean, yeah, there's some really bad twists. We can do an entire hour of bad twists. But I do want to take this because this is still it's still a writing podcast, and we still want to discuss the writing aspect of twists. So, which leads me to my next question. And I kind of wish Alex was here, our resident pantser. But the question goes like this: Have you guys ever written a twist? And what I want to know is, and this might sound cheesy, were you surprised by the twist or did you plan it? Did you just like write a scene and then like, ooh, he did it? You know, like you surprise yourself, you know what I mean? Like Attack on Titan. Did you guys watch Attack on Titan when we
Yeah,
discovered
yeah.
that Rainer, I think, is the armor Titan? I always felt like he
Yeah,
decided that at
yeah.
that moment. Like he's like, oh, you know what would be cool? Like, what if he's the bad guy? Yeah, just make it work.
I mean,
Anyway,
it's a good way to do a surprise twist if you yourself
you
don't plan
yourself
it
did
as the
not know
writer.
that.
Yeah.
So my guess, my question is like, maybe not surprise yourself to that extent, but did the twist sometimes like materialize in your head as you are writing rather than start the story with it? Or yeah, go ahead, guys.
Yeah, I've never tried this, but I've heard of mystery writers who have done this, and I think it's insane. Insane to the point I would love to try it, but where they write their setup, they write their way through Act Two, and they do it well, like they have their body in Act One, and then they have their lead character obviously investigating the body or whatever the issue is, and they go through that whole process, Act One and Act Two, without ever deciding who the villain is. They will actively not
Madness,
let themselves think about it. They
madness.
won't plan it. And
Wow.
then
Yeah.
essentially some have told me they've played games where they've put names in a hat of all their characters. And then they've drawn a name out of the hat. And then they go, okay, now I'll write my ending. Fate has told me who it is. And then they will then go through in the edit and comb it through with a few more deliberate, and they just make it logical, I guess, in the comb through. But they kind of rely on the fact that they don't know the ending to get them through the bulk of the
Wow.
suspense and the searching.
Look,
And that's
I will
insane to
never
me.
advocate for someone to be imprisoned for their writing, but something about this process
That's pretty
makes
close.
me physically in pain, and I just guys, if you are doing this, just
Get help.
ugh, never let me know that this happened, okay? Don't involve me in this
I'd feel
blasphemous
so
act.
uncomfortable reading it with that knowledge. You almost want to feel like you're in safe, confident hands. You do when you're reading a mystery novel. You want to know that the person behind the wheel has a
He's not a
driver's license,
psychopath,
right?
okay? That's something I want to know. Sorry, I'm being too harsh on them. I'm sure it's a lovely process, and you do you, right?
For me personally, like I said before, I'm always been terrified of twists. So I don't think I've ever intentionally been like, or set myself out, I'm gonna write a twist. And I was thinking about why, and I think it's because I believe so much a good twist should be foreshadowed, kind of what we've been covering, this idea that all the facts should be there, and thematically when a good twist hits, you kind of want to feel it like, oh,
Mm.
it made sense all along. Like that's the sweet spot, right? It's the surprising but inevitable. So if I try to craft a reveal or a surprise, I guess I always try and err on the side of foreshadowing because I'm like, at least say if I do a lot of foreshadowing and they guess it, they're still going to have a really good time. That's still a well-written book with
Right,
good foreshadowing, but
right.
with a twist that's guessed, as opposed to a twist that takes them by surprise and it's unsatisfying, then as James said, that just almost it taints the whole story backwards. There's no coming back from that. So I guess I've always just personally erred on the side of, well, you can't do too much
Yeah.
foreshadowing. You can't be punished for that, but you can be punished for a bad surprise.
And don't untwist it. Once you untwist your twist, like what kind of trust do we have between each other, like as a reader and writer. Like if you untwisted this twist, what tells me you will not retwist the twist? Never
Oh,
mind.
well, that's the soap opera problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where you're just like, oh no, now she's pregnant and she's dead, but now she's back from the dead. And after a while, you're just a bit numb to it all.
Oh, now she's an alien. Okay, all right. Thank you, Ali. That was really illuminating. James, go ahead.
Yes, I definitely did one that caught me by surprise where I was writing
Wow.
a ghost story. Let's see if I can explain it without giving away my own story.
You didn't take it out of my hands, right? You didn't take a note
No,
out.
I didn't.
Okay, cool.
I had written two drafts of the story,
Oh, that's
and I
cool.
knew that the supernatural antagonist kind of manipulated people in a part of the story. And the supernatural antagonist in this story was able to kind of assemble bodies for itself using dead matter or dead bodies or kind of bits of dead trees and stuff like this. And this was how it functioned in the physical world. And I had already set up a scene where I knew somebody from this character's past who had been taken by the ghost was meant to like show up on their doorstep, and he was like, oh my god, this person was actually killed by the ghost. And I remember thinking that it was probably a bit lame that this body would still be hanging around after years. But what I ended up deciding to do was have a character be killed now and end up doing this manipulating.
Fresh
But
body.
the way I had it happen in the story was that I had the narrator follow this character's movements, then the body be found, events unfold, and then information is found out that it happened in a different order. But all of those pieces of the puzzle were already there, and the structure of the story was kind of already there. And I ended up just saying, oh, if I move this here, and have the narrative follow this and then reveal back, it would end up working as a twist. So that was something that caught me by surprise on probably the second or third draft. And
Wow.
it just was
Nice.
like, oh, this
Amazing.
would work much better.
So, actually, something happened to me when I was writing my first book is that pretty late in the editing process, I decided I wanted a twist villain. And so I kind of shoehorned a very, a character that did not have an incredible amount of screen time. I thought, okay, that's convenient because they didn't know where that character is. And I just shoehorned that character into the villain role, like, oh, it has been I all this time, like Agatha all along style. And it just became a rather unenjoyable process of going back and rewriting that character's entire interactions just to make it fit. And then when you do that, you got to change how other characters react to them. And I felt like it really kind of bastardized the arc of it negatively affected the story because something just didn't feel right. It all felt like like forced. And I sat down with myself and I thought like, well, why did I really need a twist villain? And why did I? 'Cause that's the point, and I think that's something I wanted to touch on is our genre, speculative fiction, and I think our genre is kind of it's not a mystery, it's not a thriller. Most of what we write is not hinged on the idea of who done it or that thing, but still I think it is deeply entrenched in our genre. And if you look like at Star Wars, Darth Vader, look, I'm your father. It is something that is deep in the DNA of the genre. But if you look at the really heavy hitters out there, some of them like Sanderson does have a lot of twists,
He
but
does.
some of them don't. Like I don't know. There's okay. Lord of the Rings is a bit. I'm not gonna say dated, but it doesn't really have that many twists or turns. It's more like a linear storytelling. Where I'm going with this is like I think we don't need to force twists. And I think this is actually something that can happen to planners and architects because we think of the story shape in advance and we might decide that, okay, I want a twist. I want the villain to be something else and I'm going to do all these things. But I kind of think that the villain is not who you think it is, has been done a lot. And it has been done a lot to the point that you're almost expecting a surprise villain a lot of the time. And I don't know, should we? Should we give up the surprise villain? Should we do something interesting with it? Maybe if you look at some of the best villains that I like recently, I find that they're actually the rounded out villains, the interesting villains, the villains that have been humanized and you can kind of sympathize with in some ways, and they're more like mirror images of the protagonist. And if you just surprise drop ship the villain in the last second, you give up a lot of your opportunities to create that humanized, rounded out, fully fleshed villain because he hasn't been the villain until the third act, basically. So all the characterization that you've done before is kind of, out the window because it's all been a lie. What do you guys think? I'm just kind of ranting
Yeah,
here.
no, I agree with you. I think it's certainly part of the, I don't know, it's a changing taste thing. So we kind of think of that trope is done, like when probably done the first few times when someone has their first exposure to the trope, it hits hard. But after a while, it tastes the same. The soup doesn't change flavor after the third or fourth spoonful. I agree with what you're saying about fantasy or spec fic. I'll just think of fantasy for a second because horror's its own
Yeah.
kettle of fish. I'll let James
The
talk
demon
about
is
it.
the
But
demon,
fantasy,
okay? It's not.
yeah, fantasy has this embedded idea of reveals. So when you mentioned Brandon Sanderson before, he leans heavily on what I would call like elements of the magic system are unknown, obviously, to us to the audience. We don't know what this guy's made up in his head. We don't have the full knowledge of the magic system. The characters are usually at the beginning of their journey. They're also learning the magic system. So there's a lot of you can have your answer ready to go. This is how the magic system actually works. And you can have a lot of clever reveals along the way. It's the context reveals of we get a little bit of new information that lets us project forward and predict where it's going, but then it also recontextualizes past events that have happened. And that is what is really exciting.
I would just drop in and say that I think that contemporary stories, because going back to what Matan was saying, that like it's almost how much you think you understand the rules of the story, that when the twist comes and it breaks those rules in a satisfying way, that's all that more impactful. So I think contemporary stories that are set in like our time, are probably the twists that like hit us the hardest because we thought nothing like this was going to happen. We kind of thought we understood it.
Hmm.
Whereas science fiction or fantasy stories really have to establish the rules of the world really well in order to upset them in a way that still feels satisfying and still feels impactful. But I do think that
Yeah.
they are still great environments to have really, really wacky twists or really haunting twists. I think like time travel stories or ghost stories are great places to have just
Yeah.
odd things happen or really unusual, original things happen. And some authors, like I know any Alistair Reynolds book I've read, he has got all this spacefaring stuff. He has great twists where, you know, he kind of sets up the world and he sets up the way things are working and then kind of upsets it. And I know I've read a bunch of like H.P. Lovecraft has a couple of pretty
Like
good
a space
twists in his
turtle.
stories where you think you're on a you kind of think you know where it's going. And it's a horror story. So you're like, yes, it's gonna go here, 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 and then something terrible is gonna happen. And then he has like a little swerve come in where it's like the thing on the doorstep is one of my favorite twists where you think you know where the horror is, and then the character turns around and he's like, it's fine, I solved it all. Everything's
Oh
fine.
no, I
But you
love
know from the opening lines that everything doesn't end fine. So you're like, oh
that.
God, he's made so much worse than I thought it was going to be. It's really, really good stuff there. Really ghoulish stuff.
I want to combine what you said with what Ali said earlier in the podcast when she gave the example of the Prestige. The Prestige is kind of brave, and it is brave because initially it presents a very grounded world of magic. Everything is gadgets based, everything is realistic, almost like the Batman Begins version of magicians. And and that is why the teleportation stunt by Christian Bale's character is so crazy because you are in a grounded version of reality, a version of reality in which people should not be able to teleport. And the character's astonishment bleeds into your astonishment. And then he goes ahead and creates a cloning fucking machine. And I think that's kind of the courage of the writer. That's what you said, James. Don't be afraid. have a magic system, have things be fair. And why does the cloning work? Because the cloning is not a twist. If the cloning had been the answer to the question of how Christian Bale's character teleports, that would have been a bad twist. Because that would have been a twist that breaks the conventions that have been
That would have
established.
been unsatisfying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is very satisfying because it's just the fact that the guy has a twin, and the cloning is something we experience step by step in Hugh Jackman's obsession. Not Hugh Jackman the person, by the way, Hugh Jackman's character. Obsession with mimicking this trick and going to find Nikola Tesla out of nowhere. So you're playing a game with the reader when you're trying to write a twist. You're trying to give just enough so it's fair, but not enough so it's too easy. And I think we all have that fear of I'm going to give not enough or I'm going to give too much. And that's where the magic lies, right? That balance. Give just enough so it's satisfying. Don't give too much so it's obvious. And how to do it, if we all knew, we'd all be selling thrillers by the wheelbarrow, just making a lot of money. But yeah, listeners, try to write a twist. Try to foreshadow it in a satisfying way. Try to adhere to the rules of your book, whatever the rules are. If it's a ghost story, there are ghosts. If it's a thriller, there are probably no ghosts. But if you respect your reader and don't break the rules as an asshole, I think you'll be surprised by things the readers will miss in the heat of the moment, right? We always think that things are so obvious. Look at Fight Club. Look at the usual suspects. It's not. Don't be afraid. What's the worst that's going to happen? Someone on Reddit is going to post your ending before you get to it. Okay, at least you're on Reddit. At least people care. Right, guys. I do think we'll wrap up.
Yeah.
Any last words for our twisted listeners?
If the internet will allow me. Oh no. Oh no. You go first, James.
Yes, I guess I know that we never really touched on plot twists that happen kind of earlier in a story. Sometimes you can set up something in the first act and then have a really big but like satisfying and understandable upset that sends the story off in a completely different direction. So those are like twists as well. If readers are thinking or writers are thinking of is it okay for me to just send the story off in a different direction at the 40-50% mark? Then yeah, if it's well foreshadowed and it's satisfying and it creates a new interesting dynamic, I think readers will follow it.
Absolutely. Ali, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Internet. I was just going to say, if twists terrify you, and I feel like a lot of weight gets put on this idea, especially in screenwriting, where you feel like I've got to come up with a piece of work that has the perfect twist, it's the whole concept is going to hinge on the twist, and that's what's going to sell it. If that scares you, I would say do what I do, because I think it does work, but think of them just as surprises. I'm just going to start. I'm going to aim for this to be an unexpected thing that happens. I hope that I can just pull off a surprise and just kind of framing it in that way to myself. I feel like a lot of my stories have surprises. They have reveals, but not necessarily the big twist. It's not necessarily core to the entire concept. The whole story is not hinged on it. So yeah, if you just want to start small, think of it as getting good at surprises, and then maybe you'll, sharpen your knives and you'll be ready for all right, I'm going to hinge my entire concept off a twist. And that's when you're in the big leagues. That's when you're remembered forever.
I like that advice. Yeah, just try to be unexpected, spontaneous maybe instead of twisty. Guys, you're incredible. Thank you so much for joining me here today. It was really nice to have this conversation with you. I don't believe we have a quote today, which is a twist. Oh, we don't have a quote. What a twist. We're just gonna leave it at that.
Didn't see that coming.
You didn't see that coming, did you? Anyway, dear listeners, we hope you enjoyed this conversation about twists and Irish literature. If you have enjoyed our podcast, please. I think Ali had the same problem last week. Do we ask them to subscribe? Can you subscribe to a podcast? Uh,
I think it's leave a comment. I think that's what
leave
we're
a comment.
Some
what we're chasing.
outlets may let
You know, if you want to dox us and find out
think
where
you
we
can.
live, we'll, leave a comment, leave a review, listen to future episodes, purchase the new Mythic, and stand in excitement for the newer Mythic, which will eventually be birthed into this world. Thank you so much.
And if the editor does want to include a quote, I did find one from
a twist.
the one,
There is
the
a
only
quote.
M. Night Shyamalan.
Go.
And a twist, we've got a quote after all.
Post credits. Let's go.
And the quote is, what you're left with at the end of the movie should tell you what you saw. So that's M. Night Shyamalan being famous for that one good twist he did. And now he gets to be the authority on them forever.
Let the bridge burning and slander continue for another day.
You're listening to Prose and Cons, a Precipice Fiction podcast.